So again, this is on your Moodle page, and it's a big, long PDF, right? It's 24 pages long. And the actual dissection starts, it looks like, on page 14. And as you're going through the dissection, it tells you exactly what to do. You know, take off the dura mater, right? And then take a photo of the superior view of the brain. So looking down on the brain. And then it has you do a few more things, then take another photo. And then there's, I think that might be the only 2 photos, right? So you're going to take a couple of photos. You can just take them with your phone, that's fine. And then, you know, in this portion, this activity continued, you're going to cut the brain in half and take a photo of one half of it, what it looks like when it's cut in half. And those are the photos that I want you to submit as part of your lab. And then I'm also going to post some questions, right? So again, upload the following pictures of the brain: the superior view, the inferior view, and the medial view of the longitudinal section. So those 3 pictures, you have a place to upload right there. And then what I'll do is I'll also I'll put up a another file here that has a few questions relating to the brain dissection. And so that's going to count for your lab grade for the brain. Okay. I figured I would do it between now and Wednesday. I'll do it and put the demo up. There already is a demo from last semester, which I did with my daughter. I can even just repost that, you know, you guys can watch that. And then on Wednesday, I figured we could do some lecture and do some of the dissection, right? That seemed to work out really well last year, where some of the students were live online like you are. And as they're going through the dissection, they can be like, oh, what is this? I see this thing. What is, you know, what is this supposed to look like? Or what am I seeing in this part? And I could go through that with you guys. So that's my plan.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So for today, we are going to start the nervous system. Now, remember, exam 3 is on the skeletal system and the muscles, right? And that's not due until Tuesday night at midnight. I did post a few things that might help you. I don't want to confuse you more than, you know, more than anything, but there are a couple of videos that I found helpful that you may or may not find helpful if you watch them. So if they're not helpful to you, I apologize, but I'm just trying to post more videos to, you know, make sure that you can get multiple points of view and multiple people saying, you know, saying the same things using different words. Sometimes that helps when you're studying these things. So knowing that you're still, most of you are probably still working on the exam. I didn't go in and check and see if anybody finished the exam yet, but knowing that, I am going to start the nervous system today, but I'm going to keep it somewhat brief because I don't want to jumble your mind with a lot of things about the nervous system when you're still trying to go back and do the skeletal system and the muscular system. So the nervous system is chapter 8, right? What's the nervous system do?
Senses.
Communication, right? Good. It allows for us to communicate from one end of our body to the other end of our body very quickly. We can get all these signals. We're actually sending and receiving these tiny little electrical signals, which is a pretty cool thing. So these 2 systems, kind of the 2 next systems that we talk about, are coordinating all activities to maintain homeostasis. They're trying to help us maintain constant internal conditions. The nervous system is very fast. It's usually very brief, right? You get these really quick signals that go from one end of your body to the other, and they're very specific. They're targeting just a few muscles or whatever they're targeting, a few glands. The endocrine system, which we'll see after the nervous system, is much slower. These responses are slower, but they last longer. So they often have more general effects. They are controlling things like how much blood sugar you have, how much calcium you have in your blood, how much estrogen and testosterone regulate how much sperm or egg you're making, that kind of thing. So they're things that last longer. They're effects that last longer. They're not instantaneous like the nervous system. So the nervous system, because it's so quick, is a really, really complex organ system. Okay. And we like to go for functions first, right? We talked about functions with the skeletal system and the muscular system. There are three main functions of the nervous system. One is that it's monitoring the body's internal and external environments. So you have all kinds of sensors that are monitoring external environments. That's easy to think about. You can see things, you can hear things, right? You can feel temperature, you can feel something touch your skin. But you have a lot of similar sensors on the inside of your body as well, monitoring the stretch. You have stretch receptors monitoring how stretched each muscle is, especially at the joints. You're monitoring the internal temperatures of a lot of different organs. You'll see that you're monitoring in your bloodstream how much oxygen and carbon dioxide are there. There's all kinds of internal conditions that you're monitoring as well. As part of monitoring the external environment, you are integrating sensory information, right? Information is coming in from your eyes, from your ears, from your nose, from your tongue, and your brain is integrating all of that information so that you can see and hear and taste and smell. And it coordinates both voluntary and involuntary responses, right? So once you take in all that information, once you're taking in the information from within and outside of your body, your brain coordinates the appropriate responses or what it thinks are the appropriate responses. Some of those are voluntary, right? You can choose to move certain muscles, that kind of thing. Some are involuntary. Like I said, you're monitoring how much oxygen is in your blood, and that will send signals to your lungs and to your heart to change things in your blood vessels, to change those things to try to get more oxygen into your blood. That's an involuntary response. We can't control that, right? We can't do anything about that. So here is where things break down into these groups, and there's this big flow chart. This is something really, really important to keep in mind. The nervous system itself, we divide into central and peripheral, right? Just like we divide a lot of systems in our body. It makes it easier to study. The central nervous system is the brain and the spinal cord, everything in the center. The peripheral nervous system, I always think of peripheral vision, right? It's the vision on the sides. So peripheral nervous system is everything outside the central nervous system. Sounds like a cop-out, but it really is all of the nerves that are not in the central nervous system. So going to your limbs, going to the trunk of your body, that sort of thing. Within the peripheral nervous system, one thing that you'll find is that nerves can only send signals in one direction. Right? A neuron cannot send a signal in both directions. It can only go one way. So the result of that is I have a set of neurons going from my brain all the way down my arm to my hand, right? Carrying that signal from my brain to my hand. But those same neurons cannot take a signal that starts in my hand when I touch something and bring it up to my brain. So I have two sets of neurons running everywhere in my body, right? I have one set that's carrying information out from my brain and one set that's carrying information into my brain. Because neurons can only carry information in one direction, right? I've got some neurons, I've got one whole chain of neurons that's bringing that message from my brain out to my fingers to tell me which muscles to move. But I also have another set of neurons running right in exactly the same area, right next to those, that are bringing information when I touch something with my fingers, right? They're bringing that information up my arm to my brain. They're traveling in the same area, just in opposite directions. They're both in the peripheral nervous system, right? And the neurons that bring the information to my brain are called afferents. So when I touch something with my finger and it stimulates a neuron and it brings that message up to my brain, that's an afferent neuron, right? Or that's the afferent division of the peripheral nervous system. The neurons that carry messages out from my brain are called efferent neurons, right? So efferent is taking that information from my brain out to my fingers and telling me which fingers to move. So both of those are in the peripheral nervous system. Those are nerves running basically right next to each other, just in opposite directions, right? The afferent ones are running towards my brain. The efferent ones are running away from my brain. So the afferent division is basically bringing in information from my body to my brain, right? So there is what's called somatic sensory receptors, and there are visceral sensory receptors. Somatic sensory receptors monitor the outside world, right? These are what we think of as our senses. Touch, right? Touch, temperature, taste, smell, all those things are somatic sensory receptors. And when anything stimulates those receptors, that information travels through afferent neurons to your brain. Visceral sensory receptors monitor internal conditions. So they're monitoring more like your organs, right? The temperature of your organs, how well they're working, how much oxygen is in your bloodstream, that sort of thing is monitored by these visceral receptors. Again, that information still goes through afferent neurons up to your brain. Then your brain kind of integrates that information, right? It takes all that information in and it processes it and figures out what to do. And it's going to send signals back out. So the signals that it sends back out are through the efferent division. Now, the efferent division of your peripheral nervous system is divided further. Oops, sorry. Now remember, all these divisions are in the peripheral nervous system, right? Central nervous system is just your brain and your spinal cord. The efferent division of your peripheral nervous system is divided into somatic and autonomic. So what does autonomic sound like?
Automatic, like auto.
Automatic, good. The autonomic nervous system controls involuntary things, right? So it's controlling things like your breathing and your heart rate, right? It's controlling organs that are involuntary. You can't actually send, you can't consciously send those messages to your lungs or to your heart. The somatic nervous system is for controlling conscious movements, voluntary movement. So the somatic nervous system directly affects skeletal muscles. Remember, we talked about skeletal muscle is the only one of the three types of muscle that are voluntarily controlled. So if your brain is making some sort of a signal and it's sending it out through the efferent division, and it's supposed to go to a muscle to tell you to move your fingers a certain way, well, then that's going to go through the somatic nervous system to your skeletal muscle. If that signal is going through the autonomic nervous system, it is involuntary. Right? And the involuntary nervous system sends messages to either smooth muscle, cardiac muscle. Right? Remember, both of those are involuntary. They surround organs. Or glands, which we haven't talked about yet, the endocrine system. So things like your pituitary, your thyroid, your adrenal glands, your ovaries, your testes. Or adipose tissue to a lesser degree. Now, the autonomic nervous system, that involuntary portion of your nervous system, is further divided into parasympathetic and sympathetic. you have both parasympathetic nerves and sympathetic nerves and parasympathetic nerves going to all the same organs. So going to your lung, going to your heart, going to your blood vessels. You have some parasympathetic nerves and some sympathetic nerves. Sympathetic is what we call fight or flight, right? Fight or flight is when your brain perceives a threat, it gets your body ready to either fight or flee, right? It's getting you ready to mobilize everything, all your resources. Parasympathetic division is called rest and digest. This means that this is kind of what you do when you lay down to go to sleep at night, right? And your heart rate slows down and your breathing slows down. It's because you're resting, you're at rest. All of these nerves are going to the same organs, right? But you can only activate either parasympathetic or sympathetic. So let's think about your heart for a second, right? That's an easy one to think about. Fight or flight kicks in. So you're driving to work and somebody cuts you off on the highway, right? Is your heart beat faster or slower?
Faster.
Faster. That's fight or flight, right? Your brain perceived that as a threat. Your brain was like, wait a minute, that could have killed me. Right? So your heart's beating faster. What your body's literally getting ready to do is get all your muscles moving. So you increase your blood flow, you increase your oxygen intake. Remember, if you're planning on using your muscles, you need ATP. To make ATP, you need oxygen. To get the oxygen to your muscles, you need the blood. So if you are preparing to either fight or flee, you need to activate, or you need to increase the activation of how much blood flow there is, right? How much oxygen you're getting in. If you're not, well, all right. So when you're doing that, right, you're increasing your breath, your breathing rate, you're increasing your heart rate. What you don't care about is digestion. What you don't care about is your bladder, right? Your brain says, I only have this much energy, right? I need to focus all my energy on either fighting or fleeing. So I need to put all that energy into making my muscles work, right? So let's kind of back burner my digestive system and my urinary system right now and worry about dilating my pupils and getting my heart rate going so I can get blood to my muscles, my skeletal muscles. In order to digest, you need to relax. Okay, so you need to activate the parasympathetic division. So in order for digestion to start and for things to move cleanly through your intestines, your heart rate slows down, your breathing rate slows down. All the things that happen just before you go to sleep happen for your digestive system to kick in. Now, I said all your organs have a set of parasympathetic nerves and a set of sympathetic nerves going to them. You either activate all the sympathetic nerves or all the parasympathetic nerves. You can't activate sympathetic going to your heart, and parasympathetic going to your digestive, and sympathetic going to your lungs. It's either all sympathetic or all parasympathetic, right? It's all one or all the other. Now, Thanksgiving's coming up, right? What do we usually do on Thanksgiving?
Overeat.
We overeat, right? You go and
Yep.
you have a big meal, and you tend to overeat. And then what do you do after you eat that big meal?
Nap.
Nap, right? You go sit on the couch, maybe you're watching the football game, you fall asleep a little bit.
Football game. Watch dog shows.
Well, okay. What's happening is your body's trying to digest that big meal. And so your parasympathetic nervous system is taking over. So not only are you sending signals to your intestines to try to digest that meal, but you're slowing down your heart rate, you're slowing down your breathing, you're doing all the things that you do before you go to sleep. So it's not really the L-tryptophan, it's the fact that you're eating a big meal, right? If you cooked up a pound of pasta right now and you ate it, you would probably do the same thing. You would feel sluggish afterwards. Whereas the sympathetic division is the fight or flight division. Again, you're going to activate, you get that rush of adrenaline, right? Your heart rate gets higher, your pupils dilate, your breathing rate changes so that you're taking in more oxygen. You're getting ready to mobilize all your muscles. Okay, so you need to understand this flow chart. And one of the ways to understand it is just to kind of try to recreate it, right? So you've got, just try to write this out on a piece of paper or on a whiteboard over and over again and recreate this flow chart, because once you get this in your mind, it starts to really help you understand how this nervous system works.
Hey, put that back.
Sorry.
There
Screenshot.
we go. I got it. I'll print it out. Yep. No, I could have done that too. My bad.
So this goes through what I just talked about: central and peripheral nervous system, afferent, efferent, right? A lot of times the afferent division is called sensory. Those are the neurons going towards your brain. So it's bringing information into your brain, sensory information, really, right? It's temperature, it's touch, it's all these different senses coming into your brain. The efferent division is often called motor because it's messages going out, usually to your muscles, telling your muscles to move a certain way. So it's called motor oftentimes. The efferent motor division is subdivided into somatic and autonomic. Somatic is voluntary, so it controls skeletal muscle. Autonomic is automatic, involuntary, controls smooth and cardiac muscle and glands. And the autonomic is further divided into sympathetic and parasympathetic. Questions on that so far? All right. So neural tissue, way back when we did tissues, right? We got to nervous tissue. It was one of the 4 major tissue types. And I said within neural tissue, there's really only 2 types of cells. There are neurons and neuroglia. Neurons are what we think of. They're the basic units of the nervous system. They're the cells that can communicate with each other, right? They create these little electrical signals, and they can send and receive these signals. The neuroglia, this word glia comes from the same word as glue. It kind of holds the neurons together and supports them. So it regulates this environment around the neurons and supports them. There are a lot more neuroglia cells than there are neurons, and most of them are able to divide. Most neurons can't really divide, or they divide really, really slowly. These neuroglia cells can divide. What they can't do is they can't send or receive signals, right? They're just there for support. Then we get to what's the general structure of a neuron. So this big blue cell here is a neuron. Right? In general, all of the cytoplasm and all of the organelles and everything are kind of at one end. And that area right here is called the cell body. Some books call it a soma, right? Soma means body. And that's the part where the nucleus is. So that's where the DNA is. That's where the mitochondria are. That's where all the organelles are. Coming off of that cell body, you have all these little extensions. And those extensions are called dendrites. Dendrites receive signals from other cells around them. So information's coming in through the dendrites into the cell body. The cell body kind of takes all that information in and integrates it. And it figures all that out, does the whole calculation of what's coming in from where and how strong that signal is and all that sort of thing. It then sends a signal out through this long extension, which is called an axon. Well, kind of where the cell body narrows to the axon, that's called the axon hillock, just that region. The signal goes out through the axon and it gets to the end of the axon. At the end of the axon are these axon terminals. Okay. The axon terminals are the part of the axon or the part of the neuron that interacts with the next neuron. So in purple here, you can see kind of a cell body of another neuron, and you can see some of the dendrites. So the axon terminals are kind of sending their information into the dendrites of this next neuron. So you've got a big chain of neurons. This is what it looks like on a micrograph, right? You can see the cell body, you can see the nucleus. You can see kind of extensions coming off of the cell body. You cannot tell in this diagram or in most electron micrographs, you cannot tell the difference between the dendrites and the axon, right? They're labeling this as the axon hillock. They all look like extensions. You have no way of knowing that that's not the axon hillock on the left. So how are these neurons classified? Well, again, this goes back to that flow chart at the beginning. You have sensory neurons and motor neurons, right? Sensory neurons are the same as afferent neurons. They're bringing information to our brain. They're taking sensory information from everywhere in the body, bringing it to the brain. You have motor neurons, which are doing just the opposite. They're bringing information out from the brain out to the rest of the body. In between those, in your central nervous system, are what are called interneurons. So information comes in through sensory neurons. Once it gets to your central nervous system, those signals are in interneurons. And then the interneurons connect to motor neurons to send the signals back out. The glial cells, there are different types of glial cells. They make up about half the neural tissue. So these are the cells that cannot send or receive signals. There are 4 types found within the central nervous system. They are astrocytes, oligodendrocytes, microglia, and ependymal cells. Okay, and then within the peripheral nervous system, you have satellite cells and Schwann cells. Oligodendrocytes and Schwann cells are very much analogous. They're almost the same thing. They create a layer around the axon called myelin, and that helps for the signal to get down the length of the axon quicker. It insulates it. Okay, it's just they have different names because one's in the central nervous system, one's in the peripheral. You have these large star-shaped cells called astrocytes that literally just support the cells of the CNS. Right? Ependymal cells are the ones that make cerebral spinal fluid. And microglia are there to protect against, defend against disease. Satellite cells in the PNS are just there for support again. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop there. Okay, again, I know that most of you are probably still working on your exam or haven't taken the exam yet. So I'm going to stop there. We're going to meet up Wednesday. We're going to go over the rest of this nervous system, and we are going to dissect the brain, right? So I don't know. I know last semester, some people did this outside. You may want to be outside or in your basement or, you know, whatever. That's fine. It will smell a little bit. Right? It smells a little bit like formaldehyde. So you want to be somewhere where it's well ventilated, where you can have a window open or something like that. So that's the plan. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Are we doing the whole dissection with you on Wednesday or just part of it?
We'll do the whole brain. There's not
Okay.
a ton to the brain. We'll do the whole brain. It'll probably take maybe a half hour, 40 minutes, something like that.
All right. I was just looking at time wise, because I know I have to be to work Wednesday, so I didn't want to
Okay.
have to like start it and then try to figure out what to do with it after and then redo it, so. that's why I
Right.
was-
And that PDF it goes step by step. I think it was page 14 and 15 goes step by step through, like, cut it here, look for these couple of structures. And there's a blue sheet in your kit that has the brain labeled. It's a big piece of paper,
Yeah,
and it has the brain labeled so that you can see a lot of those different structures. So that when you're reading that and you say, well, I don't know what that structure looks like, you can kind of look it up, and it's done very well, to be honest with you, the way they package this.
if we're doing the whole thing during class, and then when class ends, I can just throw it away, right? I
Yep.
won't need to do
Just
it,
goes in the
okay.
regular trash. Yep.
Yeah, I didn't want to just start it and then have to go to work and then try to find where to store it if we didn't do it during class and I had
You
to
can
finish.
always, yep, you can always store it in like a Ziploc bag or something too, if you want to, come back to it later.
And then you can
Yeah.
can you throw it in the fridge or the freezer?
I would do it in the fridge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty,
Well, you guys take care.
All
We'll
right.
See you next week.
I'm
All
actually
right.
going to set my exam now because I have a busy weekend with work the next 3 days, so this
Okay.
is my only
Good.
chance today. It's my only day off.
Good. Good for you.
So
Get it out of the way.
Yeah, lab 3 still wasn't corrected. Do you want me to just uninstall it and reinstall it?
Yeah, if you could. And then, like I said, this weekend, I'm going to try to catch up on the labs. I know I have the
Okay, cool.
mastering stuff in there, but
Yeah.
for some reason I
would-
couldn't see your lab, but I think it's just something that I'm not looking at the right way or something.
Because, yeah, like I said, I do everything from the phone, so I mean, I
Okay.
can try to, I'll uninstall it, I'll take it out and then I'll put it back in. I just didn't know if that would cause problems with the grading wise, so.
No, that'll be fine.
All right, because I still have it saved in the Adobe Reader, so that's how I
Okay.
do mine. I make it a PDF there and then I go into the Moodle and I send it that way.
Good.
So I wasn't sure if there was an issue, so I'll just resend it.
Okay. That sounds good.
All right.
All right, guys.
All right. Have a good
All
weekend.
right, guys, have a
You
good
too.
weekend.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.